Community of practice, creating meeting norms.
Okay, thank you guys for coming and meeting with me today. The purpose of this meeting is to have us collaborate and come together so that we can kind of create some norms for our meeting that we'll be able to use to help facilitate the process of our meeting. So what I've done for you guys today is I have brought the agenda just so that you guys can follow along. It explains the purpose of this meeting, which I just talked about, and then kind of gives you an idea of how this is going to go. So what I would like to do, or basically is to just everyone understand that our goal, or my goal, is to create an effective team, and I feel that if we're effective, or if we have these norms, that will be more effective. So that's what the purpose of today's meeting is. What I'd like us to do is maybe think about ideas for norms, and I provided some samples here that you guys can all kind of take a look at, just to kind of think about. And those are just examples of like other meetings that we've been to. You guys are familiar with our PLC that we go to on Wednesdays. Those, we have meeting norms for that too. So what my goal is that maybe we kind of talk together and figure out what our meeting for the PBIS should be, the norm for that. So I'll give you a couple minutes. If you want, you can either just mark on that paper or on the sticky notes, and then we will come back together and decide on what our meeting norm should be. Okay, so you guys want to throw some ideas out there for me, and I will make note of them.
I would say start and end on time.
Starting and ending on time?
I think maybe, well, if everyone should have a chance to contribute.
So contributing in other ways besides just vocalizing that you said being an active listener.
Yes. Because teachers like to.
Yeah, teachers do like to talk. Any others?
I think just being respectful of other ideas. We're going to be sharing different things, and even though we might not agree, just to maintain that level of respect between each other.
Good. I like that. I did come across something that said, you know, being respectful of other opinions, and if you don't agree with it, that we maybe address that with other ideas, not point out somebody's, you know, disagreeing with somebody, but maybe providing other ideas or examples. So, but that ties into just being respectful, and I feel like that.
And I would say also post on the agenda before the meeting.
What about, since we are going to be making decisions that impact everyone on campus, some form of consensus, like having to reach a consensus with majority, or a way for us to reach a consensus before moving on so that everyone feels valued and heard?
So we can all agree that these will be the norms that we'll adhere by for the next couple meetings that we have. All right, the next meeting will be next week. I'd like to maybe focus in about why we're going to be revisiting Tier 1, because I think that's where our focal point should be. So I'll see you guys next week, okay? Sounds good. Thank you.
Community of practice, implementation of the 5 whys analysis.
Thank you for meeting with me today. So just kind of referring back to what we talked about before, going over our meeting norms, I'd like to adhere to those while we progress forward with this meeting. So today's purpose of this meeting is to collaborate and find like a root cause analysis using the 5 whys process, and maybe we can kind of figure out or determine why we need to revisit that Tier 1 of the PBIS model. So, for the first thing on the agenda, you can refer to that. I passed that out for you guys. Just if anyone that doesn't know what the 5 whys process is, basically it's a technique that's used to solicit ideas from each person here. and determine like why we're having the problem that we're having. And in this case, it's that tier 1, why we need to revisit that. So what I'd like you to do is maybe just right now talk amongst each other and figure out, why is it that we need to revisit tier 1, and kind of go forward through that. Maybe you can use the sticky notes that are provided, and you guys can kind of talk about or jot down different ideas that might go around. On the handout that I gave you, the blank 5 whys, little columns. I think that we can move on and start writing out like what our first question would be, and then maybe provide some descriptions or details to maybe answer that question, and then we'll move on to question 2 for you.
Why are we no longer meeting the tier 1 criteria?
Okay. What examples do you might have?
So I think that goes to the high turnover of teachers.
Okay.
Why is the tier 1, or how, what, and why?
So why is discipline and the STEP process linked to tier 1?
Why is corrective behavior important over punishment?
Okay, so that completes the 5 whys process. What I'd like to focus on is maybe the next steps. How do we get the rest of the staff here on campus to understand the reasons why? So we've kind of come to a conclusion, but maybe we need to make sure that all staff is on board. So what should be some of the next steps that we want to have happen here on campus? Okay, this looks like a good goal for our next time that we meet together. So what I'd like to do is maybe we can work together and create like a focus lesson, PowerPoint presentation that we'll present, or even I can present to the staff at one of our Wednesday PLC meetings. And that way we can kind of move forward with making sure that we're on board with meeting that tier 1. You guys okay with that? Yeah. Okay. So I'll meet you guys in 2 weeks, and we'll have a discussion on how that's going to go out. Okay? Good. Thank you. Good morning. I'm one of the members on the PBIS team, and for those that don't know, we use the PBIS approach to create like sustained levels of support that enhance or improve student behavior. Veteran teachers.
Safety, acceptance, recognition, justice, and fun.
Okay, so those are the 5 things that we are trying to get our kids to implement on a daily basis, or at least weekly, hitting all 5 of those things, just so that they are doing well in school. So who's on the PBIS team? So me, of course. And then we've got these wonderful pictures of everybody else. The question mark here is we are open to having new people join our team. And so if you're interested, you can email me or Mr. Albert or any of these other individuals up here. But the purpose of today's meeting is basically to rehash what Tier 1, so PBIS is broken up into 3 different levels, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. And Tier 1 we need to kind of revisit, only because there's a lot of things that have changed. So the previous years of students have cycled out, and the new incoming freshmen and sophomores, not all of them really know what our motto is, what the 5 to Thrive is, and stuff like that. So, and they don't really understand our expectations in the classroom and school-wide procedures for the first 2 years anyways. So one of the things in Tier 1 is we have strategies and a flow chart to kind of follow school-wide so that students know the expectations on what they are supposed to be doing in class and outside of class. So my goal is to fix the mindset and kind of talk about the flow chart and implementing strategies today. So at the beginning of the year, we were never really talked about all the PBIS stuff. We were just handed a folder. This was in one of the folders. And it's basically the breakdown of how the flow chart should be. So if the behavior is minor or major. We've got another piece of paper that was handed out, and it has a list of different things here. So one of the things I want to focus in is all the stuff that is minor offenses would be stuff that the teacher will intervene with in the classroom before they even send them off to the counseling office. These are all behaviors that, could be fixed in the classroom using the right kind of strategy. The major offenses can be sent straight to the office. However, if it is not a major offense, which, for example, like a non-negotiable thing would be suspension. Back up. If someone was to get in a fight or drugs on campus or weapons, those are all major offenses that automatically result in suspension or expulsion. But the other major offenses that are listed here, counseling office does intervene, but they work on a step contract process, or they work on like either restorative justice program kind of thing that they implement to get the kids back on track. So that is our focus, is using those strategies just so that everybody understands what the expectations are in the classroom, and keeping those kids in the class. So as you can read there, the ultimate goal is to provide that opportunity for the students for learning. And the more frequently that we're kicking them out of class just because of behavioral issues, the less time that they're in the class. So our PBIS team is trying to, figure out ways and other strategies to kind of push out to you guys for, managing those students. But that one website is going to be very critical and gives you ideas to how to intervene for that. So, are there any questions?